Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna K970 power cutter. The customer complaint is that he can't get it started because he broke the choke lever. And we got a tight screw there. That's not good. Those screws don't need to be so tight. You'll see later in the video that we're going to have to fix a broken kill wire as well.
Yikes.
And that's part of the reason that the choke lever broke, I suppose, is that he's been using it to kill the engine. So it's been getting double usage, and who knows, how abusive they've been with it. So we've got the top cover off and the air filter off. And, seeing all this dust in here from cutting concrete, that's normal. It's also part of the reason I don't like working on these things. They're so messy. So I'm looking at the carburetor there, and it appeared that there's some pieces missing. I blew it out a little bit, cleaned it up. We're going to take the carburetor off of here and see what's going on. There's basically 3 screws that hold this carb on. These 2 longer ones that run all the way through the carburetor to the intake block, and then one on this, air filter, nozzle holder, whatever. Full tank of fuel. We're going to want to dump that out because when I take the fuel lines off the carb, that fuel will just pump out the line and make a big mess. So we'll get this dumped out of here. Fuel quality looks pretty nice. Alright. I did not look at the filter. We'll do that later. Alright, so what do we have? There's a fuel line right there. We're going to pry that off. It's on there pretty good. Maybe a scrunch isn't the right tool for this, but that's what we got. You saw me pry the second fuel line off of there. But I tell you what, that line probably doesn't leak, huh? Now I'm trying to pull the screws out that run through the carburetor to the intake block. So I'm kind of turning them and putting pressure behind the head of the screw to get it to roll out. For whatever reason, they just don't pull out. Tight fit. You can see the carb's actually disconnected now. There we go. Then we'll get our throttle wire off of here. And, every piece on here, it's just a little bit harder to deal with simply because of all that concrete powder. It just gets in everything. Look at what a mess this carburetor is. But you can see on the end of that choke shaft, there's some pieces missing. Like the piece that the choke lever would pull on. And the lever itself is missing as well. So what we're going to need is some donor pieces or a donor carb. So this is a different saw. We're tearing it apart just to harvest the carburetor. And it's just as messy as the one we had. So there's the shaft where we're missing a piece. And that one has the piece on it. Now I got to decide. Do I harvest the pieces off of the donor carburetor? Or do I inspect the donor carburetor and see if it's worthy of putting into the saw intact? Maybe it needs a kit. I don't know. So let's open it up and take a look. Our fuel pump looks pretty decent. Boy, I'm already confused. Which carburetor am I looking at? Is this my original one or is this my donor one? And we'll figure it out. Metering diaphragm. I think it looks pretty good. I wasn't paying attention. I still don't know which carb this is. I can't quite see if the linkage is on there or not. So we'll peel this metering diaphragm off of here. And, you know, it's not like brand new or anything, but really nothing wrong with that. It's pretty pliable. We're going to save that. Alright, we have our second carburetor. Maybe I can figure out which one this is now. This one, I just can't see the choke linkage. Well, the metering diaphragm on this one doesn't seem that bad either. I mean, if I got to pick between the two, I don't know. They both look pretty good to me. I could get a brand new kit and put it in there, but the donor saw belongs to the customer that brought in the saw that needs repair. His parts saws stay at the shop, and when I need something off of them, I just grab them and put them on whatever saw he brought in for repair. The reason for that is he would spend a lot of time bringing me part saws if it was him bringing one in every time he brought one in for repair. They got a lot of saws. They got a lot of employees who maybe are green and maybe abuse the saws a little bit. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying if you're new to something, you might not know all the finer points of its operation. So they bring in a lot of broken saws. We got a fuel pump gasket here that looks like it just needed a little bit of schmutz wiped off of it. We'll put this fuel pump cover back on this carburetor. This must be the one with the from the donor saw. That Craftsman screwdriver, I tell you what, I'm not a big fan.
Same thing you were fixing yesterday, a carburetor?
Yeah. This one is missing all of this choke monkey business. Well, there you go. We took the kit out of the repair saw and put it into the donor saw carburetor. And then we're going to see about putting that into the saw and seeing how it runs. Now, I noticed that this wire was broken off of the kill switch. So we're going to have to put a new terminal on the end of that. And, you know, then they won't have to use the choke lever for killing the engine. And I'm going to use a Snap-on battery-powered soldering gun here. It's part of the 14.4 volt lineup. I don't know if I've shown this on the channel before or not. But if you have, you know, another brand of battery-powered soldering iron, you might find this interesting. You know what I find interesting is that this guy's so stupid. Yeah, it's hot. That's what it does. So let's see how long it takes for this thing to heat up and make some smoke. You know, I don't have any other battery-powered soldering iron. I take that back. I got one pencil one, but it's not much. I don't have a bigger one like this. So what did it take? Maybe 10 seconds for it to start making smoke and melting solder? I don't know how that compares to, say, I don't know. I think Milwaukee makes one. Does DeWalt make one? I don't know. So we're just getting this terminal soldered on here. I probably could have crimped it if I wanted to. But these things are subject to a lot of vibration, so whatever you can do to try and keep that wire from pulling out of the terminal, you know, that's going to go a long way with this repair. And we just push the wire on the back of the switch. So we have our donor choke lever, putting it on our donor carburetor. Here's our intake air filter adapter. We'll push that through the carburetor, kind of get everything lined up here. And then we can screw that whole assembly right to the intake block. Getting a straight shot on here isn't always easy. There's a couple holes in the handle that allow you to get the driver through there, but you see in this shot I'm not going through that hole. I'm just kind of coming in on an angle. And I'm not using it, but I do have some ball end Torx bits that would have been really good for this job. Now I'm going to do the final torque with this T-handle. A little bit clumsy, but that thing was 3 inches longer and the handle cleared better. That'd be a better situation, but it works. Alright, I'm happy with that. So now we have a couple of fuel lines and a throttle cable. We're going to try and get this throttle cable hooked into the cam on the carburetor. And you know, it's kind of tight in there. It's not that bad to do, but it's really hard to film, by the way, you know. Can't see it too well. But we get the ferrule in the end of the cam, the little notch for it, and we get the cable wrapped around the cam in the groove. Get that choke lever right out of the way. There we go. It looks like we got the ferrule in the end of the plastic cam lobe. Now we're going to pull the throttle cable and drop it into the holder for the cable. Do a little function check here. Yeah, looks like it works. Now we'll push the two fuel lines back on. They go on there a lot easier than they came off, you know. Alright, what do we need yet? The choke lever? Luckily this one can go in while the carb's mounted. And there I'm just blowing some of the concrete powder out of the carb adjustment screws. Because the odds are I'll probably have to tweak them a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, this carb came off a different engine, so I'm sure there's going to be some adjustments that need to be made. We'll screw down this plastic air filter base. It's kind of a unique setup, the way the air filter tube, that bellows looking tube, kind of draws up into the bottom of this filter. So if debris gets underneath the filter and it gets in around the carburetor, it's not going to get in the engine because that bellows is sealed to the bottom of the filter. Alright, it looks like our choke works. Check it out. We're, you know, kind of multitasking, I guess. When I flipped it over, I reached underneath just to check the belt tension. There's a slot underneath that belt guard where you can stick your finger up in there and you can push on the belt and feel what kind of tension you have on it. And just by habit, I'll reach up in there and check it. So one of the biggest problems I see with these saws is a dirty fuel filter. This one's plenty dirty. Not even close to being the worst I've seen. But we'll get a fresh one on here for them. that metal weight kind of holds the filter down into the bottom of the tank while crimping the hose onto the fuel filter. So we dumped this fuel into a funnel. You remember there was some fuel in there already, but I knew that was clean fuel. So we'll just tap this back into the machine and reuse it. All right, looks good. You know, we're gonna prime this thing up and see if it'll start. And if it does start, then that's all I'm gonna have for you on the Husqvarna K970 power cutter that needed some choke linkage. Thanks for watching. Later.